believe the Senate is grappling with now, and do you expect them to be resolved?
So, I think the two big issues that are actually going on at the moment in the Senate is on the deficit reduction side, this idea of, is it going to increase the deficit? And as a result, are the Elon Musks and for those members in the Senate, Senator Mike Lee and Senator Rand Paul and Senator Ron Johnson, are they going to continue to push for a bill that ultimately tries to decrease the deficit, aka, probably not put out as much in terms of permanent tax cuts? The other thing going on is, on the how to pay for it is the Medicaid work requirements, because those moderates in the Senate, think of Senator Collins and Senator Murkowski, are essentially trying to push back some of what the House has already done. Now, we have two polarizing forces trying to push the bill in a different direction, sort of challenging for Senator John Thune here. So I think what happens is you will see these negotiations continue to play out over the next week, maybe the next week and a half or 2 weeks, and then you'll get a clear picture of where the Senate's going to go. But this bill does have to change in order to get enough senators to pass over and support it in approval.
Okay, so what does SALT really look like? What, is it going to be 40,000? Is it going to be lower, or what we think?
So I think it's going to be either 40,000 or slightly lower than that, because I think what's going to happen here is, look, if I'm Representative Lawler, I really enjoyed that interview this morning with Speaker Johnson, because he defended the cap and said, look, we negotiated this and it took a year. And the SALT caucus in the House does have a lot of power. They can say, look, we're just not going to vote for it. If you want to throw it back down to 10,000, Senate, feel free. I'm not going to vote for it, and it's not going to pass. But this idea of it's either going to be 40,000 or maybe slightly lower, because then the SALT caucus is in slightly more difficult position, because they did get something out of it. So for those of you in New York and New Jersey, I think you're going to get something. It's going to be around 40,000 or maybe just slightly under that.
Nathan, you mentioned Elon Musk. He has come out really harshly against this bill and on other topics. How much influence does he have now that he's no longer technically part of the Washington story?
So this is one of those things where it's starting to brew into an issue. I don't think it's an issue just yet. I mean, if you looked at Speaker Johnson's interview, he defended what they have been doing, and there's a lot of criticism on the congressional, the CBO at the moment in terms of that $2.4 trillion estimate of increasing the deficit. So if you ask the politicians up on Capitol Hill, I wouldn't say that there's really much there yet, but it could be coming, because like Elon Musk said on X yesterday, he's calling for individuals to call their senator and call their congressman and say, let's not support this. And there is a little bit of a group coming together. Senator Rand Paul, Mike Lee, Ron Johnson. That's enough votes that potentially could derail this bill. So if I'm Senator John Thune, I have to figure out how to get some of those individuals on board. And the answer is, well, maybe these tax cuts are permanent. Maybe they're just extended a certain amount of time. Or maybe this bill shrinks. Or maybe the debt ceiling goes from a $5 trillion increase to a $2 trillion increase. There's areas of flexibility here for leadership. And I think we're going to see that play out over the next few weeks. So we still think this bill is going to increase the deficit. But stay tuned, because it may not be what the CBO just scored yesterday.
I think I asked you this before, but this is obviously what I'm interested in, and that's what happens to a lot of the energy tax credits, the ITC, from the IRA. And all the companies are kind of waiting on tenterhooks for what is going to happen. What's the indication that Republican senators are going to step up and try and fight for these tax credits?
So we've heard through the grapevine that, there are a lot of lobbyists up on Capitol Hill right now really pushing for this. And there are some receptive ears. Senator Tom Tillis from North Carolina is one of those individuals who's really focused on this. Now, I think you're going to start seeing snippets of what the Senate is thinking towards the end of this week, maybe the beginning of next week, in terms of those tax credits. And we're telling our clients that, look, the House tax credits were somewhat positive and then initially negative on the solar industry in particular. And I think you are going to see some moderate voices coming through when it comes to the Inflation Reduction Act. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be very difficult for some of these Republicans, say Senator Tom Tillis, for example, that will vote to gut the Inflation Reduction Act when the Inflation Reduction Act is bringing jobs and plants and, other types of economic growth to their states. So I do think you're going to see a moderation of what the House did. And I think we'll see some of those details coming out early next week.
Got a red headline crossing the Bloomberg terminal. NATO adopts military buildup plans as part of new spending goals. So we'll have some more reporting on that. So some movement there across the pond. Nathan, President Trump quite successfully kind of worked the phones in the House to get passage of the deal. It's a little bit different in the Senate, where, these folks have 6-year terms here. What's the expectation of what kind of influence President Trump can play in this negotiation in the Senate?
You hit it right on the head. I mean, obviously with the House of Representatives, they run every 2 years. And so the idea of a primary threat is much more serious to them. But when it comes to the Senate, I will say is that their primary goal is to make sure that the tax the tax increases don't happen by the end of the year. Senators know they have to pass something. The question on the Senate side is that what else are we going to do with this? So I think that President Trump will have to take a different type of approach in working with the Senate. One of those things like, look, this is America First policy. And even though only 1/3 of the Senate will be running approximately next year, the Republicans do want to remain control of both the House and the Senate. And failure to adopt something like that could put that at risk. So I do think President Trump will have a little bit more hands-on approach with the Senate. Obviously, he's going to have to manage both those who want to see the deficit decreased, along with the moderates who want to see how these pay-fors decreased. And I think they will be able to come up with a solution. It's just going to take a lot more work, and he's going to have to roll up his sleeves to do it.
All right, Nathan, really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Nathan Dean joins us from Bloomberg Intelligence. He covers all of policy there for Bloomberg Intelligence, that senior policy analyst.
When we were down in D.C., I did have a little free time. You were working.
I was working.
We went to Lincoln Memorial and the Vietnam Memorial, all the cool stuff. I had no even thought of coming. I'm going to go to Capitol Hill and see my representatives.
Oh, God, no.
So I got much more inspiration from going to the Lincoln Memorial. But you go to Lincoln Memorial, you read the Gettysburg Address, and then you read his speech for the second inauguration. It just takes your breath away.
It really does.